In the boundless epic of evolutionary history, the passing of certain traces is like a breath of faint flower scent that never dissolves in the depths of deep time. She possessed a lightweight frame evolved to the ultimate limit for sprinting through forests, her long, agile legs capable of transforming into a blur of gray light through dense fern bushes with the slightest exertion. Yet, on that ancient continent governed by absolute might and savage blood during the early Cretaceous, she survived as a counterintuitive enigma that modern paleontology adores. This tiny creature, who should have dashed frantically across the forest floor for survival, chose neither to fall exhausted in a thrilling flight nor to leave a single cry of fear in her final days. Tonight, by the faintly flickering hearth, let us step into her true life with this story that requires no effort to remember. Anabaesetia anni. In cold guides of fossil taxonomy, this name usually denotes a medium-sized, early herbivorous ornithopod dinosaur that lived across the southern landmasses of Australia and South America. But in the true night of over 100 million years ago, an era packed with violent continental drift and painful crustal splitting, Annie utilized an ultra-restrained stillness to become a gentle echo of relaxation. This is not a cold encyclopedia of territorial dominance and bloody plunder, but a midnight lullaby of how to shed the heavy burdens of sprinting within the torrent of eras, falling into a peaceful sleep inside the tender embrace of green leaves. Over 100 million years ago, on the rim of the ancient Australian landmass, the air was forever filled with a slightly sweet, primeval pine resin fragrance born of rising geothermal heat. It was an ancient tropical rainforest thick with giant redwoods and lush bird's nest ferns. Because that continent was then sliding toward the edge of the Antarctic Circle, the nights here always felt remarkably drawn out, carrying a thick, melancholy cold mist. The first turning point of Annie's destiny was driven by an unannounced intrusion of polar cold air, burying the entire floodplain beneath a thick layer of damp, freezing fog within hours. As the temperature plummeted sharply, the dense shrubs that sustained survival froze over entirely overnight, plunging the whole forest order into absolute collapse under panic and starvation. Annie's companions were entirely terrified by this sudden bitter cold. Relying on their agile limbs, they began an endless, blind frenzy of flight across the pitch-black forest floor. Crowding and jostling, they bit one another frantically with hardened horny beaks just to claim a shallow cave that could block the freezing wind. As their dull collisions and panicked cries echoed long into the dark night, Annie stood right at the edge of this internal friction of the crowd, her 2-meter frame appearing remarkably miniature beneath the feet of giant beasts who had lost all reason to fear. Dust billowed into the air, and each vibration of the earth forced a painful protest from her every bone. At that moment, watching her usually gentle companions turn violent and distorted under the whip of fear, a profound rift of panic and tension tore open deep within Annie's heart. She suddenly realized that on this wasteland entirely occupied by anxiety and survival instinct, endless, blind running could never bring true warmth, but would only accelerate the utter exhaustion of life force. She did not join the chaotic herd fighting to blood remnants for a vain sense of security, nor did she attempt to use her agile talent to carve out a bloody escape toward the far distance. Instead, on a twilight when the bitter wind grew piercing, she turned her body with agonizing slowness. Stepping upon the red soil dusted with thin frost, she moved like a redwood needle drifting silently through time. Without a single trace of regret, she walked away from that frantic territory, step by step, toward the desolate and quiet unknown wilderness, leaving the collective shelter of the herd. Meant Annie had to face the adult nocturnal predators operating on laws of lightning-fast slaughter alone, such as primitive Deinonychosaurs adept at ambushing deep within the woods. In an ancient rainforest devoid of open sightlines, a single second of oversight or misjudgment meant a medium-sized herbivore lacking heavy armor defense would be ruthlessly erased by the dark. Yet within Annie's slender, lightweight frame flowed a near-detached certainty. She could not learn to dash frantically through fallen leaves to prove her existence like the predators did. Instead, she chose to carry absolute relaxation into her very marrow. She walked so slowly, because her back bore no burden of extra armor plates. Her elongated hind limbs paused in the air for seconds with each step, her wide feet producing a soft, gentle rustling on the moss-covered roots. Her posture did not resemble a journey, but rather an act of using her body to stroke and perceive every breath and pulse of the forest. This slowness, ironically, created a beautiful resonance between her and the surrounding night. The long wander accumulated deep fatigue in her muscle fibers, and the thick chill condensing from the high canopy seeped inch by inch through her rough skin textures, sending a stiff ache through her blood. She had to find a resting spot before the blood pump within her chest grew completely numb from the cold. In this cruel night, the wisdom of survival was never determined by physical might, but by who could be the first to find an absolute haven to anchor the soul within a crisis-ridden world. Finally, as darkness fell completely and the plain wind softened, she discovered an exceptionally hidden terrace of giant ferns beneath a towering cliff in the forest heartland, naturally enclosed by hundreds of ancient giant trees. It was a natural sanctuary accidentally sealed by nature. The towering cliff walls blocked the furious monsoons entirely, while the center of the fern nest radiated an enchanting, subtle fragrance of ancient flowers mixed with earthy sweetness that I and the shallow documentaries of later generations obsessed with behemoth battles and dinosaur combat. The lightweight ornithopod is routinely deconstructed as the most cowardly victim at the absolute bottom of the ancient food chain. The world assumes that in a realm ruled by the jungle law, any creature lacking the colossal horns of a triceratops or the tail club of an ankylosaurus is destined to become a mere appetizer for predators in the meat grinder of fate. Yet this arrogant view completely fails to read the profound wisdom of restraint in Annie's bones. Her lightness was not weakness, but served as an invisible psychological wall allowing her to masterfully evade the storms of the era. On the very first night after settling into this hidden fern canopy nest, danger inevitably pierced the forest's defense, descending upon this quiet sanctuary in its coldest form. A massive primitive carnivorous dinosaur, starved and weak from a prolonged lack of prey, followed the faint scent of life, slipping noiselessly through the mud to the edge of the branch where Annie rested. It was a silent gamble of will and survival unfolding in absolute quiet. The predator's eyes, glowing with a ghostly green light, moved through the dark like a shifting signpost of death, its heavy breath chilling the surrounding air. The ancient cicadas singing in the dark folded their wings instantly, the shrubs fell deathly still, and the moisture in the air seemed to freeze into ice under the carnivore's ravenous gaze. Yet, facing an ambush terrifying enough to shatter the souls of any smaller species, Annie displayed a near-sacred, breathtaking composure. She released no useless roars to vent her fear, nor did she bolt frantically using her speed like her kin. Instead, he dropped her center of gravity entirely, grounding her 2-meter lightweight frame firmly into the soft dry debris. She ceased all movement completely, burying her head deep between her slender forelimbs and laying her long tail smoothly along her side, transforming into a piece of gray, withered bark devoid of life's warmth. In the occasional flash of lightning tearing the cloud gaps, her spine, covered in fine scales, reflected a cold, heavy density like rock. This was no food to easily rip apart, but an impassable defense rising abruptly from the ground. This siege of will lasted for a full half-hour. Ultimately, before Annie's rock-like, unshakable restraint, the madness in the predator's eyes was replaced by despondency, forcing it to retreat step by step into the dark forest depths, carrying away its heavy exhaustion. With the thrilling confrontation dissolved, midnight in the rainforest welcomed its most tender and fated hour. The heavy clouds finally split under the night wind, and a faint, emerald-tinted moonlight filtered from the canopy openings, illuminating the tiny green sanctuary where Annie rested and painting all shadows with a sacred silver edge. What truly brought absolute quiet to this wilderness was the presence of thousands of pale yellow flowers blooming slowly at midnight from ancient gymnosperms drifting across this deep canyon. These ancient blossoms, long extinct in the modern world, exhaled the most generous and tender essence of life into the cold night dew, their faint fragrance radiating an enchanting, cozy warmth rich with earthy sweetness. Annie completely dropped all defenses, beginning an exquisitely restorative, immersive pre-sleep relaxation ritual inside this sanctuary meant for her alone. She adjusted her posture gradually, pressing her lightweight frame, exhausted and ifned from the long trek and the recent confrontation, inch by inch closer toward the ground. Because her frame was so refined and small, she developed a wondrous, warm misunderstanding when facing the massive, broad fern fronds that stretched meters long like a giant sofa bed. In Annie's perception, this colossal leaf, radiating a subtle aroma of botanical oil and curling gently at the edges, was no plant debris, but an unparalleled green blanket generously gifted by nature. She began to move, adjusting her small limbs with a near slow-motion elegance, stubbornly curling her frame into a perfectly rounded ball amidst the soft leaf litter. As she settled, the thick, plush green veins swathed around her from all sides, like a benevolent ancient mother completely enveloping her entire body with great green hands. The warmth from within penetrated her fine subcutaneous fat, swathed her tense nerve fibers, and rapidly spread to every organ dulled by the cold, dispelling the sticky anxieties within her body. The wind grew lighter at this hour. It no longer attempted to rip through the forest, but like a gentle midnight radio tuner, stretched the velocity of the plane's sound into an infinite length. Annie closed her eyes, completely surrendering her consciousness inside the absolute cocoon of her giant leaf blanket. The end of life arrived quietly and elegantly. For Annie, it was merely the most peaceful and enchanting evening among countless deeply comfortable nights. It was an ordinary end to a rainy season in the early Cretaceous, the air sweet with the faint caramel aroma of lush, over-mature plants, while thousands of gentle meteors streaked across the dark sky. Annie was too old. Her skeleton had accumulated countless hairline fractures from navigating dense woods and braving cold currents, and every movement of her slender limbs required enduring a blunt ache deep within her bones. Yet she showed no panic of finality. On that star-filled night, she simply returned beneath the giant fern fronds that had accompanied most of her life, sliding inside slowly in her most familiar posture. A sense of true peace swathed her completely. She cradled her tired head gently within a soil groove cushioned perfectly by fallen leaves, the frond's texture coarse yet warm, offering her fading life force the ultimate sense of liberation and reconciliation. As the warm gravity of the earth took full custody of her slow-paced skeleton, a localized landslide triggered by prolonged rain sent soft, fine silt and volcanic ash pouring smoothly into this hollow. Without fear, and without a single cry, this supreme master of forest relaxation slipped directly from mortal dreams into eternal sleep, tucked inside her favorite giant leaf bed and cradled by the comforting halo of flower scents. Over the next 100 million years, oceans turned into lands. The ancient Australian continent underwent countless rifts and reshapes, its once flourishing rainforests compressing and rising into the cold southern sandstone strata of today. Yet Annie's body, maintaining that perfect curled posture and tightly sealed under fine sand and volcanic ash, underwent mineralized change, fusing beautifully with the cold stone until every tiny vertebra and trace of lightweight bone became an exquisite part of the Earth's skeleton. 100 million years passed like an invisible torrent, washing over every corner of the continent, leveling the ancient woods and transforming the flourishing plains into today's red rock deserts. Enveloped by layers of silt, leaves, and volcanic ash, Annie's graceful body underwent mineralized change. Eventually, every tiny vertebra and trace of lightweight bone fused perfectly with the cold stone, becoming part of the Earth's own skeleton. Because she died in absolute peace, undisturbed by predators, when the joint archaeological team gently brushed away the last layer of red soil 100 million years later, every scholar present was stunned by the breathtaking completeness of the remains. It was flawlessly preserved. The slender skull and unique bird-like hip bones were crystal clear, the back still maintaining that healing posture of relaxing in the wind, perfect as a gray deity that had just fallen asleep at midnight. The world marveled in scientific papers at the milestone significance of this fossil in evolutionary history, defining her existence with professional terms and analyzing her structural weight-bearing limits. Yet few could pierce through those cold academic names to see the Cretaceous night, filled with low-frequency white noise, that had once comforted Annie's entire life. True strength never needs to prove itself through roars and slaughter, it is always contained within the deepest quiet and self-restraint, much like this long lullaby Annie wrote with her entire life. Now, you too might be lying in a sanctuary of your own, free from the storms of the Cretaceous and the worldly chaos that brings you tension and anxiety. Those daytime trivialities that left you exhausted and perplexed are, before the boundless river of time, nothing more than an insignificant grain of sand in the wilderness, not worth sacrificing your sleep for. The earth will cradle your tired body with the gentlest gravity and endless night, just as it accepted Annie eons ago, washing away all your unease and tension. Your bed radiates a pleasant warmth, and your soft duvet offers the most comforting physical embrace, mirroring that giant green fern frond that safely covered Annie tens of millions of years ago. Drop all defenses and weight from your heart, listen to this story that requires no effort to remember, and let your slow, deep, and measured breathing carry you away. Slowly, close your eyes. Good night, Annie the Anabasetia, good night, to every soul shedding its heavy armor tonight, returning to an inner mountain-like peace.